Uh, G'day everyone, it's Steve Tolan, Mr. Stolan. Delighted to be here today at the Job at a BDX Summit, and yeah, fantastic. So looking forward to walking you through, I guess, the sales strategy that I've been using myself for over kind of 20 years, and what I put together, and what I believe you should be working on in a quite a tight market. A little bit about me, just to kind of kick off. For those that don't know, Steve Tolan, Stolen, been in the industry for many years. I'm going to talk about, the sales touch points today, change the game, which is my kind of tagline. And, even listening to the session before with Charles and Leslie, things have changed, and it's the most common kind of challenge that I hear from people, and even the job at a kind of data. Only 5% of recruitment businesses are happy with their BD strategy. My five before the call kind of framework, my stolen methodology, and the success factors. And for those that don't know me, I do like a fist bump. And yeah, I get noticed quite often in Martin Place. So if you ever see me over there, give us a fist bump. And that's actually the key to success in sales, trust me. So I'm going to go through a little bit about myself, but 20 odd years I've been in recruitment for my sins, predominantly in sales, revenue generation, known for authenticity, my high energy, if you haven't kind of picked that up. And my tagline has changed the game. So I do believe in you continually have to evolve. And I think there's been more evolution in sales in the past kind of 2 to 3 years than probably the last 10, with technology, etc. And for me, I'm all about harnessing that kind of humanity, bringing that human element, but utilizing technology. I've worked through startups, global businesses, led teams, being the rainmaker, the sales leader, what have you. And I really enjoy, that's what my passion is. And I'm always seeking to kind of upskill and look at new ways in which you can kind of be successful within sales. RPO and MSP, hosted events across Australia, and I'll get into that in a moment, since 2014. Most people on here, I think you've probably been to a few, and know that they're quite unique, which is good fun. And became known as the LinkedIn guy. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for a middle-aged bloke, but I took the plunge, and I'll show you in a second, and really saw the way that the market was changing a few years ago, and really invested in my personal brand. So utilizing video, so we'll talk about that in a second. And today I help sales leaders and founders, really develop the strategy, doing fractional sales, so getting in there, help and support the team. From experience, people tend to learn more when they see someone else going through the motions and actually utilizing their kind of experience. Host the events, and I'll go through my stolen methodology. So that's me. And yeah, a good place to start in Jan 24. I just about to kick off Stolen Co. January in Australia. It's not the best time, as you know. So I was sitting there at home, and I was looking to kind of launch, and thought, what can I do? There's not many people around that are looking to engage my services. So you can build the brand. And that's what I did. So a good friend of mine, Mr. Mario Beckish, said, do a video. So 20 videos for 20 years in recruitment. And my format was quite simple, which was really doing them for 60 seconds. I don't sell, provide kind of 1 to 2 tips, give people information. And the goal was always to kind of start a conversation, to say to people, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, if you want to engage. And then that commitment and kind of consistency really led me to where I am today. The interesting thing, and that's not trying to be a bit kind of prickly, but it's a true thing, particularly if you talk about LinkedIn, 99% of people don't produce content, which is staggering. So the opportunity is actually there, but you don't see the results instantly, right? It's that commitment and that consistency that actually gets you through. And the hardest part was actually starting. So, I'll talk about standing out for the crowd. And today, within a crowded marketplace, you've really got to work hard to fight for people's attention. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But there was a couple of screenshots there of some of the early videos that I did. One of the first ones there on the right, you'll see, was me outside a coffee in Manly Place, in Manly, with "Rest in Peace, Wolfie" written on the wall. No idea who Wolfie is. And one of the ones that got the best engagement was me on the Manly Ferry. And what I was talking about was the importance of face-to-face meetings, being authentic and being out and about. So it was something as simple as that, but they were some of the early ones, and you can see the engagement. So building an audience, I've hosted events for, as I say, 10 plus years. My tagline was kind of change the game. And I really wanted to highlight this because I think today, when people are really struggling to be seen, you've got to do so much more upfront work to actually stand out, really fight for the attention. Leslie said before, and Charles, your clients have all access to this technology, but seeking to build relationships, and as recruiters, you want to get out there and meet people and build trust. When I started doing events, it was a case of bringing the people, or bringing an audience to me. So, you can see we support each other at the events. I typically have over 100 plus recruiters, competitors. 10 years I've been doing the events, but I have a lot of keynote speakers that come along and talk about topics that appeal to you personally and professionally. So mindset coaches, people talking about the evolution of recruitment. And I really enjoy it, control the narrative. And I've got an event coming up in August. But This is a lot of hard work that's been to do. But again, if you look at the impact that it's actually had, development of my brand as well as the corporate brand, it's fantastic. And it's really when I'm kind of in my element. So just a couple of examples there of the events that I've done. But this is what I want to get into, which is the sales touch points. And I've no idea who that picture is or the person that's on the right, but it's a stock picture. But just thought you might need a slide without a picture of me on there. So in case anyone's wondering who it is, but sales has changed. And for me, over the 20 years, 1 to 8 touch points is what you need to be looking for. And I'm going to get into this in a second, but what I see today is too many people, we get a connection or a slight glimmer of hope, and we want to pull the trigger. We want to sell. We want to pitch. And you've all been there and had these automated pitches that come through. Maybe they've had some interaction, and it's not good. It's pathetic, and you just lose credibility. So this is the thing that I always look at, and I'll go into my methodology in a moment. But I generally think a lot of the people in the recruitment have become order takers. They were used to business that just kind of came in. Well, what happens when that doesn't, isn't there? Well, it's important that you stand out, you build a brand, and control what you can control is a big kind of message that I continually use. You have to fight for that attention. But if you think about the standard, the way the mind kind of operates, if you're making any significant purchase, you wouldn't just walk in there typically and do it on day one. You'd probably think about it, get feedback, etc. So when you're actually selling, the number of touch points is key, be that LinkedIn, social media, podcasts, face to face, think about it. And you'll know when someone's ready to actually, move forward with an opportunity. The five before the call framework is something that I put together. So with all the changes that have happened, when I look at this, if you're not focusing on these today, then you're making life really, really hard for yourself. So LinkedIn, 1 billion users on the platform, it's evolved and it's continually evolving. I hear people all the time say, the algorithms changed and this, that, and the other. Do you know what? Guess what? Just focus on creating your target audience, being committed, being consistent, and actually putting quality content out there that's authentic. When you go on there, the common feedback that I hear is it's all the same. That's why I tend to sit there and, you'll see pictures of me with the dog, or you'll see me in Martin Place with the fist bump. There's not too much kind of editing that goes into it. It's just me being myself. And that really builds trust and actually builds credibility with people. So that's the first thing that I would say. But if you're not really understanding and developing your audience, you're missing out. The personal branding, I spoke to someone yesterday and they said, why would I, develop our personal brand of our people? And then they might leave. Well, if you don't do that, they'll probably leave anyway. So this is the thing. People buy from people and they will represent your company. So what you want to do is you want to develop them so that other people are, hopefully tapping them on the shoulder, treat them so well that, they don't want to leave. But if you don't invest in your people now more than ever, you're missing the point. Video usage, when you've seen, it's integral that you get comfortable with this. A middle-aged guy like me who stands there with a video and Martin Place can do it. Anyone can. But, the authenticity, I think, is what makes me stand out from the crowd. The AI and automation, I'm probably one of the worst with a computer. Ask anyone I've previously worked with. Using these smart tools that will allow you, if I went back a couple of years ago with the first wave of automation, people were expecting it to do the sell, and all you have to do was send an invoice. It doesn't work like that. What it does is identify the problem that you have. Maybe it's connecting with the right people, but giving you more time back to hopefully, for me, to connect or get enough attention with the prospect to engage in a conversation. This is the way that I look at it, right? So break down your process and work out what the tool is. And there's some great tools that are out there at the moment, but I genuinely believe that those that really master this and enable them to have more time speaking to people will be the ones that are successful. And then the human element, right? If you're not showing up and networking face to face, then you will fail, right? So use all these smart tools, but get out and meet people, build trust. It's a people business and it always will be. And then make the warm call, not the cold call. I know Jess Kimber says, the cold call is dead. I completely agree. If someone said to me now, make 50 to 100 calls and just rattle through, I would get very demotivated with all my experience. If you do all of the above, by the time you've picked up a phone and actually connected with someone, they're likely to say, hey, I've followed your content. I've heard about you. Great, mate. Maybe you can help me with this problem. So there's no get away from it. Recruitment's always been tough. You've got to do the hard yards if you want to be successful. And this is my 20 years of recruitment expertise into 5 kind of bullet points. So the first thing that I always do, and I say this to people, is you've got to attract attention and do it authentically. So if you think about the age that we're in with influencers and people on YouTube, etc., they build an audience and then they promote products. This is exactly the same methodology that you need to do. So you need to stand out. You need to be connecting with the right people. potential clients, potential candidates. If you're looking for these unicorns, they're going to come to the person that they believe is going to get them a job. That hasn't changed. So, make sure you're out there, do your research, qualify effectively, and connect with the right people. The next step on that is build engagement, right? So once you've actually got someone that goes, hey, I'm slightly interested, or you look like someone I want a conversation with, engage. I mess up every other day on this where I get it wrong and I go too fast and I want to go from point one to point five, where someone has just shown me a bit of interest or connected on LinkedIn and I pull the trigger and a pitch. What happens is it's like a game of snakes and ladders. You slide right back to square one. I've done it myself. And when I reflect, it's because I've gone in too early or I've pitched too early, right? The next point on that is building rapport and trust. People are looking, there's 10 to 12,000 recruitment businesses. What makes you different, right? Is it your network? Is it your relationships? Is it your authenticity or what have you? And if you get to these three or four kind of touch points, as I mentioned, it's likely that someone's going to go, do you know what? Can you help me with this? Or potentially, I'm going to come to you when I'm next looking for a role or what have you. Or your potential clients might say, actually, look, I've got these challenges with my current provider, what have you. Let's sit down and have a proper conversation. So patience is key on this in terms of not just going in there and doing that terrible kind of pitch where people just go from one to five, but close and reflect. And I'm going to break this down into each kind of points, and hopefully this will give you a few examples of how I've gone through it myself. But attracting authentic attention authentically, showing up is half the battle. You've heard that said before, but showing up, being yourself, not looking to pitch and just build relationships. And it takes time, but you have to do the groundwork in these days, right? If you really want to be successful. We talked about it before, sharing insights and sharing value. Don't just rock up and do that kind of self-promotion. Don't just rock up and say, hey, I've got a job, or contact people when you need something, right? That's not how it works. So share value, market insights, like JobAdder, when they talk about the fact of, say, 5% of businesses are happy with their BD strategy. It's gold, right? It creates curiosity and people engage. So really think about this and show your skill, your subject matter expertise, and promote yourself as that kind of expert. And be human, right? Again, I see this time and time again. I got a message yesterday of someone I've been connected with on LinkedIn for 10 plus years, and it was obviously sent by a bot. And you look at it and go, I know who you are. Is this really happening? The credibility. These things, they might be small things, but you can do so much damage to your brand by just seeking to go from point one to point five and try and pitch someone. So really think about it. And there's an example of some of the events that I've done, which is really where I do, I create and I build an audience and I don't sell. Build meaningful engagement, is the second point, which is, start real conversations with someone. Hey, what's going on with you? How can I help you? I actually work in this sector. I've been working in this sector for X number of years. Here's what we're seeing, because I speak to a lot of your competition. Mr. Job Seeker, hey, here's what we're seeing at the moment. Salaries have dropped, or also, that sector is probably not the most kind of buoyant, but with your skill set, give advice and be an expert. Share perspectives on the trends as well as the challenges. When people are sitting here saying it's quiet and you're sat in the office, I guarantee you could probably go out and speak to quite a few people who'd want to speak to an experienced recruiter about their next career move, right? Plenty of people will meet you for a coffee, particularly with the price of coffee these days in Sydney. So think about this, but get out and really share your expertise and lead with curiosity, not an agenda. And a little personal story there on the right, one of my last events was how I've kind of built this engagement. I hosted an event that was on mental wellness, and clearly I'm not an expert in that space, but I felt it was important to people at the start of the year. I felt people could really use something with purpose, and it was awesome. And there was clearly no selling there. You could have had a pin drop in the room, and that was Colin Cuthbert sharing his story, his personal journey. And you'll see the guy on the left, Teddy Kofi, former world champion. Cole didn't know, but we got him to sign a glove, and the glove says "keep punching." That was one of the biggest highlights for me for for one of my career in terms of building authenticity, and hopefully people could understand that I wasn't doing it for myself, I was doing it for the attendees, right? So this is how you build engagement. So think about that, right? When you're not going in with a dollar sign in mind and you stand out from the crowd. Building rapport and trust, the next point. And so, focus entirely on the people that are there. How can I help you? Right? What's in it, not what's in it for me, but don't rush to solutions. We see this all the time. And again, I've done it. Someone connects with me and I pitched them and I said, yeah, this is what I'm interested in. Hack this. And they're gone, they're ghosted. And it drives me nuts because I know in my mind, I've gone from point one to point five on the process. And give, don't take. This is the key thing. If you're building a relationship with someone And maybe, you know, two or three times you've introduced them to someone, you've connected with them, you've asked them to speak on an event. Guess what? Over time, it will come back to you. And I fundamentally believe that the more that you give and don't expect something in return, then, you know, you'll watch how it will actually kind of come back to you in abundance. So patience is a, you know, is a key virtue, and that consistency and credibility. There's a picture there, Rivi on the right. You know, Rivi was a TA manager, someone I worked with many years ago. You know, he came to me, he was a potential client, and then he was looking for a job. And I felt quite humbled with that, you know, and he just said, how can you actually help me? And hopefully he's found an opportunity at the moment. But that means a lot when people actually reach out and say, hey, can you actually help me? So, you know, if you're in recruitment, you're in a position of real trust and authority, and it's a privilege. So, you know, don't forget that. But co-creating an opportunity, when I kind of break this down, you know, if you're engaging with someone and you're building trust, you don't have to force it. It will happen naturally where people say, I get you. I like your values. I can see how you're trying to help me and you're listening to me. So, you know, let's see how we can kind of move this along and be proactive but thoughtful. You know, maybe the time's not always right, you know. So don't push, 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 because what you'll see is, you know, people will then go, they'll kind of push back or they'll disappear. And that's powerful questions, you know, would it help if I did this? Or, you know, what's in the way? You know, have you got an opportunity? But really be curious, and not desperate. You know, that's the kind of thing. But position as a partnership, you know, if I look over the years, one of the things I'm most proud of is many of my relationships, people have been clients, then they've been partners, what have you. And I've built a network over 15, 16 years of some awesome people that have had multiple jobs, right? It's built on trust and that kind of credibility. So again, play the long game and not just seek to kind of get a quick win within, you know, the next kind of 30 days, and close with confidence. And there was me at the end of one of my events, you know, looking hopefully quite confident, and my teeth look quite white there, which is awesome. So it's not a bad smile, but you know, you complete the deal, or there's something there for everybody. You know, reflect on the process. You know, what's worked, what didn't. I always take feedback off people, because I go a million miles an hour, and sometimes I have to kind of sit back and reflect and go, what's actually worked. Ask for feedback all the time, right? You know, you're not perfect. One of the key things that I'm always doing is I'm always learning. I am terrible at technology. If someone said, give me advice on how to work Excel, I'll probably be the worst person. Hard work, you know, capability, sales, etc. I'll take on anybody, and prepare for your next opportunity. And some of the key factors there in terms of, you know, control what you can control, track your engagement metrics, particularly on posts, review your progress, because it might not be working. Practice continuous improvement, be consistent, and feedback at all levels is absolutely key. And on that one, I'm going to close. And that was a picture there with my son Nathaniel, who comes along at some of my events and sits at the front with me. And there he is, just making sure my hairstyle's looking okay. So thanks very much, Dan. I'm going to hand over to you, my friend.
My head is spinning. I don't know how everybody else is out there, but my head is absolutely spinning. That was such a gold mine. Trying to keep up with my own notes so I can apply it to my team, because I just think there's so much value in that, Steve. Thank you for sharing. And
Thank
that,
you.
your authenticity really shows through. And I love that photo of you and your son at the end. I think that just really encompasses really who you are. And it's such a great shot.
Thanks, mate.
How to summarize some of the things I heard, because there was just so many important nuggets. I'm going to have to listen to this again. One thing that came through a number of times that you mentioned, you said 99% of people don't really produce any content, but to get traction, you've got to work really hard. You've got to be authentic. And then you wrote something that you mentioned a few times is really like the fight for attention. And
Yeah.
to get that, you need to have multiple touch points across many different mediums. And you had a great slide where you articulated all the different channels that you think are most popular. It's important to invest in your people to do this. And you referenced something Jessica said as well. Don't make a cold call, make a warm call.
Yeah.
But then you contrasted that with don't pitch it too early though. You've got
Yeah.
when it flips over. And I think that might be a good point to just ask you about. When do I know I've moved from a cold call to a warm call?
Yeah, mate. Great question. This process, the 1 to 5, it's the same me if we're engaging on LinkedIn or you know, social media, whatever. But I also do it on a call. If I've made a cold call, you know, you'll engage. So engage in a conversation, engage with that kind of curiosity. So I think for me, you just know if you've met someone 2 or 3 times, or you've had a couple of cups of coffee, you've had the kind of the calls, you'll know when you can see the body language will kind of change, you know, even if it might be as simple as they're responding or they're commenting on your posts, right? Or they'll send you a DM, you know, in whatever. But I think that's the and I said this. I mess up. I do it on a regular basis. I did it yesterday with someone that just came through and I pitched too early, and it drives me insane because I'm going, you know what's happened here, right? So I think just kind of take a step back, but always focus on that 1 to 8 touch points is key for me. I think when you get to like 1 to 4, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, people feel kind of compelled to kind of sit back and say, okay, or they'll at least want to kind of qualify and say, is there something in this for me, right? Whether it's a job seeker. And it happened to me the other day. I went out to, I'll give you an example. I went to Parramatta and I met a project manager in IT. And I was talking to him and I said, look, would we be a natural choice as your, when you look for your next opportunity? And he said, well, let me put that back to you. He said, what parts of my role do you think will be affected by AI in the next 2 to 3 years? He said, I really want to get your take on that before I move forward. And I was like, oof. And it was a do you know what I mean? So this kind of curiosity. So I hope that kind of gives you just a couple of examples, right? But I think you'll know when it's time to kind of push, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good insight, and I'll personally take away from that 1 to 8 touch points. I think that's probably a good metric to have in the back of your mind. Can I ask you about time commitment to do this? How do you manage your calendar that you have time to do this? Do you do this once a week? You chunk it up and then post like it? And maybe if you think about some of the teams that are listening today,
Yep.
how would you advise them to build this into their workflow?
Yeah, mate. So look, if I look at posts, then I post typically about 3 times a week, and usually there's 1 to 2 kind of videos. So you have to kind of find the time, right? That's the first thing, and don't spend too much time on it. I do spend a lot of time on kind of social media. Look at the activity levels, mate. And I think, look, if you structure your day, right, you cannot control the outcome, right? You just can't, but you can control the inputs. You can control the activity levels. And I think for me, and I look and I go, find some time. I typically do it in the morning, and, I'll put a post out and I'll go, I'm going to connect with 20 people today. And you know what? If I get 5 conversations out of that or just conversations, mate, that's a win because you multiply that over the week, right? You might, 20, 25 conversations. If I can then take that down to kind of 5, meetings or what have you, then that's a win. So putting the activity in, but you have to set time aside for it. The other thing, and I didn't really get into this, is the mindset. A lot of people have psyched themselves out of this before they've even kind of moved forward. That's a real trap, right? So, you can control the inputs, as I say, and particularly when you're putting stuff out there on social media, you're always in positive because if you don't do anything, you're no worse off. So I think find the time, set some time in the morning. But yeah, I post about 3 times a week.
Yeah, thank you. And thinking about some of the consultants that might be listening today as well, like if you're mentoring or coaching them, they've got this tension between, all right, I need to build my personal brand, I need to make sure I'm authentic in the market, I'm reaching out, but I have the reality that I have this target
Yeah.
hanging in my head as well. Like, how would you sort of talk to them about achieving balance between doing what I know long term will help me find success, but
Yeah.
short term I've got to make sure that I hit my goals?
Wow, mate, that was a conversation I had yesterday, and it's that push and pull, right? We've got targets, we've got financial kind of commitments, but I could spend another session on this. Um, Again, control what you can control, and if I flip this back, and I hope I don't cause World War Bloody Three here, but leaders, you can't just sit back and play defensive, right? Your people respond better to seeing how you go through this, right? So one of the most common bits of pushbacks I get is, oh, it's been a long time since, it's recruitment founders. Okay, cool. But the game has changed so much in the last few years. So I think leaders have a responsibility to show people how it's done. Lead from the front, mate. Don't play defensive. And they're right. But I think today, when my first job in Australia, we made 60 BD calls a day. Can you imagine if people made 5 a day now? Then you'd be delighted, right? So if you're leading by numbers, the only thing you're going to do is demotivate people. So I think take a step back and go, how can I help my people be visible, feel upbeat? And yeah, mate, as I say, if you're doing the right activities, which is all of the above prior to picking up a call, will you be successful? Maybe, but I think your percentage or your success rate will probably be higher if you're following all of the kind of the practices I mentioned.
Thank you. We have some questions from the audience as well. So one question from Izzy. Izzy said, awesome achievements, Steve. If you could go back and do something differently, what would you do and what impact do you think that would have?
Oh, Izzy, great question. Mate, wow, that's a gold question. I think if I went back and did things differently, I probably wouldn't change too much, mate. You know, I've always been someone that's taken on big lofty goals, right? I throw myself in the deep end even now. And it's funny because the older that you get, you know, for me, I still very much enjoy selling. I enjoy the art of BD, etc. And that's what I'm kind of known for. So, you know, I'm a bit of a nutter, but I'll happily work autonomously and I like showing people. So I think I probably wouldn't change a thing, but I probably would have been, and I'm being really, really open here, be myself or been a bit more authentically me a little bit kind of sooner rather than trying to fit this kind of corporate image. Because when I kind of mastered that a few years ago, I realized people love you for who you are. You know, so that's probably the one thing that I'd probably say ever reflected.
Yeah, I think that's such a good answer as well. We have a few more questions here. We've got two more from the audience as well. So this one's like a scenario question. So what would you
Okay.
do in this scenario?
Yeah.
So the scenario is you've been connected to someone on LinkedIn for 7 years.
Yeah.
You've met them once in real life, but that was it.
Yeah.
You suddenly see they are advertising a job on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you message them and offer them your services, or do you let it pass because it's not warm yet?
Mate, the first thing I'd say is, why have you left it 7 years? Like, you know what I mean? So, like seriously, if you've connected with someone, you know, why have you connected with that person? So that's the first thing I'd say. I'm not trying to be rude or difficult or what have you, but I think it goes back to this kind of, if I talk, let's talk specifically about LinkedIn then. So I'm guessing, you know, we've not got a kind of level one relationship. What content are you putting out? Because again, if you're putting content out, talks about your craft, let's say, and I'm not sure where the role is, but you're working in IT as an example. If you're putting out that says, here's my thoughts on the market, here's how I helped a candidate, da 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 da, the likelihood is 7 years later, if you did connect with them, whether it was through a message or through a phone, it happens to me all the time. They go, I've seen your content. So I think don't leave it 7 years, you know, but produce that kind of content, promote yourself where someone would want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. Final question as well. A bit of a free kick here, Steve. What a super session. Thanks so much, Steve. That was genuinely awesome. I'm a new recruiter and would like to know which LinkedIn program would you recommend as most appropriate for building your brand and network?
Oh, mate, geez. So I'll be brutally honest. You know, for me, I have premium. I use LinkedIn. I think don't, and I'm probably not going to get shot here, but just focus more on showing up, posting consistently. You know, you can send 100 connection requests a week, and the hit rate that I kind of get is quite high because people naturally go and look in your shop window. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'd worry about being authentic, showing up, connecting with the right people, putting out quality content, and then kind of following up and engaging with people, mate. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for such an amazing session and a personal thank you. I know you did this session with a broken rib as well.
Broken.
Have the same energy. You were just engaging as always. I just think you
Yeah.
did such a fantastic job. I encourage everyone to please go and follow Steve on LinkedIn. We want to see more Martin posts and Martin plays Jerry videos. And this has been, yeah, just absolutely outstanding, Steve. So
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Sarah, for all your hard work and the team. Really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
No worries. And now, if you'd like to join Jessica, she's leading a fantastic panel around the power of personal branding for lead generation. You can please go and join that session now. Thank you very much.